of your car and your office. Just concentrate on your inner soul.
When you do Gora.
Yeah.
But I suspected that Norbu's real reason for visiting the Lama was to hone his meditative techniques. The temperature here can drop to -15 degrees centigrade at night, and I had read that the monks in these parts can tantrically generate heat from within. Norbu had home advantage, faith, and now personal central heating. I was in trouble. It was the day of our departure, and the omens for success were good. A few more pilgrims had arrived overnight, and as the sun hit the tip of Kailash, the temperature soared to a balmy -5. Our herder, Satan, strapped the last bag of yak dung to the back of our yak, and we set off.
Do they sit them down to load?
No.
No? Just stand.
Yeah, because it's not a camel.
No, it's not a camel. Okay. How far have we come? About 400 yards.
The 3-day circular route wasn't just the longest walk I've ever done. It also involved climbing a further 870 meters to get over the Dolma La Pass. And if we made it that far, there was still 18 kilometers back to Darchen.
Proper
Unfit academics.
Yes.
Used to sitting at our desk.
No, we still take a lot of books. No?
Yeah, yes. You can't leave them behind, can you, Norbu?
For the first few hours, the visual focus of our journey, the mountain itself, was nowhere to be seen. When we did see it for the first time, it was a welcome tonic.
Oh boy, yeah. Oh, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
As well as being home to, amongst many others, the Buddhist deity Samvara, the Hindu god Shiva, and various Jain saints, this mountain gets much of its symbolic power from being the source of 4 of the world's great rivers, including the Indus and the Brahmaputra. As we skirted the western edge of the mountain, I came across a site that took my understanding of devotion to a new level.
Maybe they spend 20 days.
20 days.
Yes, to finish the prostration.
Shh. What do they do with their belongings and their food and things?
Poor. 저런데 그 칼라타한테 그쪽에 수케. 칼라타한테 수케 말이야.
What these pilgrims told Norbu was truly astounding.
Yeah.
Every day?
Yes.
He takes his
their
stuff,
sense to,
then walks back
come back.
and prostrates to his belongings.
So very, very hard.
Extremely hard.
Sure.
Extremely hard.
If you do the maths, by the end of this 3-week journey, they would effectively have gone round Kailash 3 times, once prostrating and twice on foot. At Tarpoche, there is a huge version of the ubiquitous Buddhist prayer flagpole. Legend has it that the omens are good if the pole is either vertical or leaning towards Kailash.
Yeah.
If anything, I'd say it's maybe leaning that way. Or is it perfectly vertical?
I think so.
And that means no problems, huh?
Yes.
I left Norbu and Satan to their devotions and wandered up the hillside to another prayer site. I suddenly realized where I was. I had chanced upon a sky burial site.
I'm not sure that I should be up here. And a couple of Tibetan mastiffs over there who Obviously don't like the idea that I'm here, I don't think. But this is an extraordinary place. There are a few birds winging their way back and forth. It's a curious situation because they have special people who cut the body up into pieces and crush the bones so that the birds will eat the lot and carry it all away. And you see no signs left at all except the odd item of the deceased. That looks like a wrap of some kind and somebody's hat. And for each body there's a little can.
In Mahayana Buddhist beliefs, consciousness leaves the body about 3 days after clinical death. From that moment on, a corpse is truly lifeless. The sky burial struck me as being the final act of generosity, enabling other birds and animals to be nourished by one's remains.
And what a place to go, eh? The Kailash. Just looking on. Really is the most extraordinary place.
"6 hours, but only 5 kilometers later, I was beginning to wonder if my flesh and blood weren't going to help sustain the local vulture population. We'd reached the height where there was so little oxygen that the body starts to make its own by eating itself. The wind and the cold weren't helping either. My legs were screaming out to stop.
I passed the 5,000 metre mark, and 5,000 metres doesn't really sound enough. It's 5 kilometres above sea level, nearly 3 miles higher than I'm used to. And I do feel like my whole body isn't up to it.
I was being beaten by the slightest of inclines. And I have to confess that I started obsessing about an undignified end to my trip around Kailash. I pictured Norbu strutting proudly along, whilst I was strapped to the back of a yak. It felt awful. I had the weight of England and Oxford on my shoulders, and I was letting the side down. This was meant to be a reflective, spiritual journey, but I wasn't getting it. Even the sacred site of the northern face of Kailash did nothing to ease the pain. I was deeply relieved when we stopped for the night.
Oh yeah,
Hey.
oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
no kujulu. That's like wondrous.
Oh, that's
They're called that.
Very good.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
oh yeah.
Now I understand that a couple of guys, travel writers from Britain, who tried to go around Kailash, got this far as well, and then had to go in one of those oxygen bags and had to be carted back down. In a way that would be bliss, because I know how they feel. But what I'm going to do is stick it out till tomorrow morning and maybe I'll feel better.
I'd thought that the night's rest would be restorative, but it wasn't. Within an hour of sunrise, I was again lagging behind. And as we passed the glacial source of the Indus River, my legs finally gave out.
Would you want to drink something? Would you like to drink?
For the first time this trip, I had to crack open the emergency oxygen supply. We were only halfway round Mount Kailash, but we were a day behind schedule. Norbu had thought it best if I rested to try and acclimatise a bit before taking on the highest part of the journey.
Where is the path?
Oh yeah, man.
I've come to rather an alarming conclusion. I couldn't do this on my own. I need Norbu both as a companion and also as a sort of foil to play off. And it's an odd sort of relationship because it is slightly competitive, but yet we both egg each other on. And I certainly want him to do it, and I'm sure he wants me to do it too. But at the same time, if at the toughest phase, Norbu said, "Oh goodness, I just can't go on, I've got to ride a yak for a kilometre or two," I'd think, yes.
The climb to Dolma La was imminent. I dragged my tainted soul towards the journey's toughest challenge, the Dolma La Pass.
That's it, the final pass.
Sure. Then we go down.
Then down.
But we will.
It might be possible to ride a yak, mightn't it? I think we've gone about 35 metres up. 35 of 200 is really that much. So there's still quite a way to go.
What on earth was I doing? I was a geographer, not a mountaineer. And yet, had we been on Everest, I would have been 2/3 of the way to the top. Further humiliation came in the form of a day tripper, who, despite having walked 27 kilometers in 6 hours, didn't even appear to be out of breath. Worse still was being taunted by Norbu, who was straddling a rock, looking not unlike someone riding a yak. After 2.5 days of agony, I had arrived at what was the spiritual climax of the pilgrimage. Countless generations of pilgrims had been here before me, leaving behind a gigantic web of prayer.
How's you feeling? Are you okay?
Very terrible.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
How long have you been here, Norbu?
Maybe 20 minutes here.
Your faith carried you along, I think.
So from now, we go down the hill.
Downhill all the way?
Yeah.
That's a nice thought. Oh.
But this yard, right? But